American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tellustrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is May 2nd, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, joined by my co-host, Robert Parker. And our guest today is Jeremy Kohlman from the Extra Point podcast. We got the NFC East coming up. Fellas, big time draft for this division that really struggled on the field last year.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly, Nick. This whole division has struggled for years.
Well, we got some interesting players coming in the fold here with especially let's start out in Dallas. They really went heavy on defense. Again, I said this during the AFC East podcast, but when the team has a particular position or side of the ball they struggle on, I don't understand why more teams don't do this. Just go really heavy on that side. So, and they I feel like they had a very solid start to the draft here. Really love most of their picks through round 4 here. We'll get to it though. Micah Parsons, they traded back, got Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. Kelvin Joseph, the LSU transfer to Kentucky at corner at 44. OC Odigizua. I know I butchered that out of UCLA. Jeremy knows how to say it though.
You didn't. That was perfect.
Okay, boom. I practiced it in my head 3 times, and I feel like I still screwed it up. But anyway, UCLA. He had a great Senior Bowl. I know who he is. Just hard to say his name. Chauncey Golston out of Iowa, edge the 3rd round. You got Nashawn Wright out of Oregon State, that corner. Which I don't know if y'all are Last Chance U fans, but I'm pretty sure that his brother was on it on this most recent season with the San Francisco, that community college out in Oakland. I'm pretty sure that was the brother that played at Oregon State, and he ended up going there too. Jabril Cox, North Dakota State transfer out of LSU, slid to round 4. Great value there, I feel like. Josh Ball out of Marshall, the tackle. Simi Fehoko out of Stanford, just a beast of a human being, like really good measurables, everything. A lot of scouts liked him as a sleeper at wide receiver. Quinton Bohanna out on the defensive line, out of in the interior, out of Kentucky. Israel Mukamu out of South Carolina at DB. If you watch that Georgia upset that Carolina had a couple years ago, he was a big reason for that. Lots of picks in that game. And Matt Farnick out of Nebraska, guard, moving inside. I believe he played tackle in college. Guys, obviously, I'm a big fan when you have a struggling team and you have a giant draft class like this. This is a massive amount of players coming in the fold. I think the value they got was tremendous. Really, from top to bottom, I don't have any complaints about this draft. This is one of my favorite draft class. I love that you went all in on the defense. You could probably argue value on a couple of the guys, but again, if I could see the logic and I see why you do it, I can get over whether or not I personally love the player there in that spot. I think this is one of the better drafts in the entire league. I'm going to give this one a solid A.
Yeah, I'm right below you on that one, Nick. I'm not going to give the Dallas Cowboys a solid A, for one, because they're the Dallas Cowboys. But I tell you what.
That sounds personal, Rob.
It was great for them to address the defense side of the ball in this draft. You was hearing stories that, Jerry Jones wanted to trade up and get Kyle Pitts and kind of, pair him up with Dak Prescott moving forward. But, that didn't happen. And I tell you what, I know the Cowboys and the Cowboys fan base wanted Patrick Surtain at that number 10 pick. However, Michael Parsons is definitely a transcendent piece that, can be a leader for them on the defense side of the ball moving forward in the future. And we know Sean Lee retired. Jalen Smith, I don't know what his contract is going to detail. I don't know if he's going to be shipped out or whatever. And Van Der Esch, that linebacker room has kind of been nicked up year in and year out. And you get a player like Michael Parsons at the number 12 pick. I think that was tremendous value, and I think he's going to be a great player. But I tell you what, their second pick in Kelvin Joseph, I know he was, all world coming out of high school, getting recruited by LSU, but, he got toasted, a couple times, in his days at LSU and his days in Kentucky. I think it was a great pick because it was a need pick that they needed to on the defense side of the ball at the cornerback position. But I think, it was a little bit of a reach for Kelvin Joseph going there at the 44 pick. So that was one of the things that kind of worried me about the Cowboys. It was other players that they could have picked in that same similar spot with better value. So I really give this one a B in my opinion. I really think they addressed the need, for the defense side of the ball. But I think a lot of the players that they could have got, more quality players with that value pick.
Yeah, I have to agree with more Robert on this one than you, Nick. I've got some issues with a few players in here. I'll start at the top, though. Trading down and still getting Micah Parsons, just a small trade back with a, division rival, which you don't see very often. Parsons could be, like Robert said, a transcendent player. He needs to grow up and be a professional because there are things in his past that do worry me. Just the hazing stuff at Penn State, getting into fights with teammates. It's like this is the NFL. If you are a locker room problem, you might not be around for super long. So kind of a home run swing here on a great player, great talent. So I like that pick. I like the Kelvin Joseph pick a little bit better than Robert does. I know Val, you might have said there are some other guys on the board. He's extremely talented though, and he has a really great mindset. He does not let getting beat factor into the next play. He's one guy that is willing to challenge someone on every play, and like his body language did not come off like someone who was like down after a bad play. It's like you see that with a lot of corners. And it's like you just have to forget the last play and move on to the next one. Odigizua, like you said, had a great Senior Bowl. He could be a really nice nose tack, 3-tech kind of rusher from the interior. Did not like this Chauncey Golston pick at all. I do not see him being a pass rushing presence at the next level. He was barely a pass rushing presence at Iowa. Only had like 12 career sacks or something for Iowa after starting multiple years. I think he can be a nice run defender. He might be able to grow into more of a defensive tackle for them because he is 6'5", 270. I could easily see him putting on weight, moving more inside. That could be a nice pick there. I like the Nashawn Wright pick. Don't think he's going to stay at corner, though. Think he's going to end up moving to safety where his 6'4" frame and lack of like true deep speed doesn't get exposed on the boundary there. I think he could be a real ball hawking free safety. Jabril Cox is the steal of the draft for them. I had a round 2 grade on him. I'm really surprised he slipped this far when even on like the ESPN.
Why do you think he dropped, Jeremy?
So say that again.
Why do you think he dropped?
He's a little small. He only probably weighs 225. But in today's NFL, it's more about coverage with linebackers than anything. And even the guys on ESPN were saying that he could easily be the best coverage linebacker in this class. So I'm really surprised that like a guy with that type of skill set fell this far, to be honest, especially after being a really good player at North Dakota State and then going to LSU and backing up that he can play in the SEC too. That tells me he's going to be an NFL guy. He's going to be in the NFL or should be for a while. Josh Ball was a huge reach in the 4th round. He has got great talent, but he is like a Class A jerk, for the lack of a better term here, because I'm not going to be able to say words I want to on the radio. He's just not a good teammate. He routinely gets in fights with teammates. He has a ton of off-the-field issues. I was really surprised he got drafted this high. I think it happened because there was a huge run on offensive linemen in rounds 2 and 3 to where they kind of had to panic and say, if we want to get a guy who we think can play, we're going to have to take a guy. But there's a lot of like character concerns with me on this one. He's another guy kind of like Parsons where it's like, you need to grow up and accept that like this is now your job going forward and you can't do all this off the field stuff, or he won't be in the league in 2 years if he, kind of just stays on his current path. Simi Fehoko, like him, he's a big body wide receiver, kind of a box out wide receiver. Nice value at the end of round 5. Honestly, I could see him move to tight end in his future just because he's such a big guy. He could be that move tight end. Quentin Bohanna, this is probably a guy not a lot of people know about, but he has just been the anchor for Kentucky's defense for 2 or 3 years now. No one runs on him. That's a great find this rate to get like a great run stopper this late. Israel Mukuamu, he needs to find the position that best suits him. South Carolina played him at corner, and just 6'4" corners don't play in the NFL. He is not quick-footed enough, and he does not have the hips to turn and run with guys that have good to elite speed.
That's their second very tall corner they took.
Right. Yeah. So I think his best position is free safety going forward. I really do, because I think he'll get exposed. When you're in college, you don't face the best wide receivers every week. You can get away with stuff. I just don't think he'll be able to get away with that going forward.
Did they hire Dan Quinn in Dallas as DC?
Dan Quinn's the D coordinator down there, so they do like
he likes those tall corners.
Athletic, guys who can do a lot. And Matt Farniok was a good pick late. That's a solid offensive lineman pick. Going into the last 7th round, I had a draftable grade on him. He's a good run blocker, solid pass protector. Nothing really stands out about him, but he's a guy that can be in the league for a while.
What you got? What's your grade?
I'm going to give it a B- just because I don't like the Chauncey Golston thing. One of the big thing was I thought they were going to like address edge rusher. They didn't really, in my opinion, just because I don't think Golston is that type of guy. And then just kind of the character concerns behind Josh Ball. That's a huge red flag for me. I think I really – he's got the talent to start in the NFL. He does, but those character concerns worry me a little bit. Character concerns with Parsons concern me a little bit, even though it sounds like he has kind of grown out of the childish stuff, he participated in at Penn State. If he's got his head on straight, and becomes, like an all-pro, like people think, then I'd be more comfortable giving this like a B+, A- type thing.
All right, let's move on to the New York Giants, the G-Men. Surprising pick here. They trade back in the first round, and they end up with Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Urban Meyer specifically said that he was heartbroken when Toney went because they were planning on taking him at 25, it sounds like. But Toney, so no doubt he's a first-round talent. I don't doubt the talent. But Rob and I did our post-first-round podcast the other night. I just hate the fit. I hate the fit. I don't trust them to be creative enough with Toney, and I think it's going to be a forced situation. However, when you look at the weapons across the board, Ingram, Galladay's there now. You got Barkley coming back, and you throw Toney into that mix. You're not asking him to be your top guy, so it could work. Could see where it worked out. Jeremy, Rob, and I also said with that offense, the only thing you're missing is an elite quarterback, and I think there's an elite quarterback looking to make a move at this moment. So if we're the Giants, we're probably stringing together. Hey, Green Bay, how many picks do you need for that Aaron Rodgers guy to come out and play some quarterback in New York? Aaron Rodgers with that Giants offense. Woo! The second round pick sounds like they got great value with Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. That guy, I saw him go in the top 20 in a lot of mocks. Speedy edge rusher. It ended up taking a fall, and I think they got great value there at number 2. Aaron Robinson's a guy that was a little bit under the radar, but a lot of the scouts liked him out of UCF. Solid corner pick up there. Ellerson Smith, Northern Iowa, another solid under the radar FCS opponent, specifically mentioned by Jeremy as one of the few NFL guys Trey Lance may have seen during his time at North Dakota State. Gary Brightwell at Arizona and Rodarius Williams in the 6th round, 2 6th-round picks at corner. Williams, I believe, was a Senior Bowl guy as well. So you got 2 corners out of it, 2 edge rushers, Tony and Brightwell, a couple playmakers on the offensive side. Brightwell just gives you a little depth. I don't think he adds a lot to the equation, but I think Tony, if you use him right, he can. It's just as long as Daniel Jones is the captain of that ship, I don't trust it. So for that reason, even though I like a lot of these picks on paper, and I think Gettleman actually did one of the better jobs he's done. This is, you only get 6 players out of the draft for a team that needs a lot here. I'm going to go with the C+ on this one. I'm going to go with the, you know what? Actually, C. I felt weird saying plus. I'm just going to go with the straight C on this one.
Wow, we're totally opposites on this particular draft, Nick. So you gave it a C+.
C.
A C. Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually gave the Giants an A, and I know we talked about the 6 picks that they got in this year's draft. But I'm looking at what they did for next year as well. So with that trade with Chicago Bears, they picked up a 1st round and they picked up a 4th. So if you factor that in, that's a great value to actually get a guy like Kadarius Toney in the 1st round. And I know you're skeptic of Daniel Jones and how they're going to use Kadarius Toney, but I tell you what, I mean, even if they don't use him the way that we know he can be used initially, at least he can add value on kickoff and punt returns right away. So I think it's a home run hit with Kadarius Toney, and we already know what this league is going to, where you just kind of want to create those mismatches and you just want to space people out. And we had this conversation before, Nick. I tell you what, Kadarius Toney runs one of the best, stick routes, one of the best jerk routes that you will see out there. And I tell you what, just working with Sterling Shepard and Kenny Golladay, he's going to be more of a polished receiver with his route running. And just get someone like Azeez Ojulari, in the 2nd round as a pass rusher. The New York Giants defense actually held up pretty well last year. So if you can add a pass rusher, which they need, and then you have Jabril Peppers and you have that linebacker group that played really, really well last year with the healthy Saquon Barkley coming back, and then you pick up an Aaron Robinson. I know he's not one of the top ranked corners that was on, big boards out there, but he's a solid player. And then you go and you get Rodarius Williams, the cornerback out of Oklahoma State, who just had a solid career his whole career. I think it's a pretty good draft, but I'm also factoring in that 1st round and 4th round for next year. So with that being said, Nick, I'm gonna give it an A and not a C.
I did not factor that in, I will admit it, but I'm going to be stubborn and I'm going to stick with my C because I love Tony. I hate the fit. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm closer to Robert on this one. I'm going to give it an A-. Big reason is that trade. Anytime you can pick up a 1st round pick in next year's draft and a 4th round pick, I mean, you're adding, 2 pick, a top 30 pick and then a top 120 pick to the haul you already have. I mean, that means you're probably going to have 5 impact picks right away coming out next year's draft. But then honestly, I really like almost all the players out of the guys they drafted. Tony's electric. Like Rob said, he's going to be a factor from day one, even if he is in a little bit of a crowded wide receiver room, just because he's going to be that electric punt return man, electric kick return man, if given the opportunity. And then honestly, I was telling the guys on Thursday night, I don't think Kadarius Toney is anywhere close to a finished product. I actually think he can work on his game a lot. I think there's a lot of wasted motion to his game that if he can eliminate, he's going to even be more dangerous than he already is when he kind of sits down and focuses on just becoming a wide receiver. At Florida, they used him all over the place. He had to do so many different things. Now he gets to come to the NFL and focus on just being a wide receiver. I think that's
because the Giants aren't creative enough to use him, you're saying?
No,
right
I like where you're going there, but no. No, I just feel like once he gets the NFL level and can really focus on becoming an elite wide receiver, he's always going to be able to do the run around, catch around, I'm going to outrun you type of stuff. But like getting to the NFL and being able to focus on even just more in and out of breaks, not having wasted motion and whatnot, I think he could just be even more dangerous than he already is as a receiver. He's already going to be a great after the catch guy. I think he can even get better in just like the other receiving aspects of the game. Just all the little things that go into being a great receiver. Azeez Ojulari going in the second round might be one of the best steals of the entire draft. I had him as a locked in first rounder. I think my only concern here is I think he's a little bit small to play defensive end in a 4-3, but or wait, no, they're a 3-4 out there, aren't they? Yeah, no, I take that back. This is a great fit. I forgot they transitioned to a 3-4. I feel like he could be like a James Harrison type of player. He's just very strong, very squatty build, but really powerful guy, but really surprises with his athletic ability and his first step. I think that's a home run pick. I love the Aaron Robinson pick. He's a guy that can play inside and outside corner. You just don't get enough guys that can do that in today's NFL. And the fact that he's got those traits is just fantastic. You mentioned, I said Ellerson Smith before. I'm a big fan of Ellerson Smith. Kind of reminds me body wise, a little bit of a JJ Watt, kind of the same motor, kind of the same build. Just can see him doing really well as like a left outside linebacker where he kind of played at left defensive end for Northern Iowa. Gary Brightwell, I understand you wanted to add a running back. I don't really understand what Brightwell brings to the table that a lot of other guys didn't, that were on the board at that point. So to each his own. If they think he fits, that's great. Rodarius Williams is a guy, I love him. I thought he'd be a 4th round pick in all honesty. You see him be he was a very competitive corner at Oklahoma State. Really liked this draft. That's why I give it an A-, plus with that trade to get future picks. I feel like they did a good job. I think it's worth noting that, they're getting Nate Solder back from opt-out this year. So it's like there's that left tackle need kind of gone if Solder plays up to his level of potential. Didn't really do much at linebacker, but they did draft 2 outside linebackers. So we'll kind of see how that goes.
All right. Philadelphia Eagles trade up with the Cowboys to get Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith out of Alabama, the Heisman Trophy winner in round 1. They trade up again in round 2 to get Landon Dickerson, also out of Bama. In round 3, I believe the story was they traded back. Correct me if I'm wrong, because that video was going viral of the guy just not being into the pick at all. Like they were going around high-fiving, fist bumping, and the one guy was like, because McNeil from NC State went off the board the pick before to Detroit. And so you could tell he wasn't happy about the Milton Williams pick from Louisiana Tech in the 3rd round. Zach McPherson, the corner out of Texas Tech in the 4th. And the 5th, you get Gainwell, running back Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis. Solid running back out of Memphis there. I believe he was an opt-out last year. I'm going to butcher the name. 6th round, Marlon Tuipulotu out of USC, interior lineman on the defensive front. Edge rusher, love this guy. Taron Jackson out of Coastal Carolina. Jacoby Stevens, big-time safety out of LSU. And Patrick Johnson, edge out of Tulane. I think those last 3 picks were just unbelievable by Philly. I absolutely love the first 2 picks and the Gainwell pick. I think you have a bunch of playmakers across the board that could be Eagles for a long, long time. I have a couple questions. I have reservations about giving an A+ to a draft because I have a couple questions in the middle there. Milton Williams, McPherson, and the interior lineman out of USC there. I think it's an A though. It's an A for me still. I like the amount of just the sheer size of the class. Plus I think they got the players they wanted to get. Dickerson and Smith too. I see those guys as absolutely working out. And when you add Dickerson to this offensive line in Philly, the big issue, it's funny they took a chance on Dickerson for me because what's the big issue with the Philly offensive line? Talent or staying healthy?
Staying healthy.
And you took a talented guy who has trouble staying healthy. So, I mean, like, wildly talented, like, no doubt. But if this line can stay healthy, I mean, what a grab with Dickerson here in the 2nd round. So, and Gainwell's just quietly one of those backs that I just feel like can make an immediate impact. But I mean, so if Miles Sanders goes down for a set amount of time again, you got a solid backup there. And then just the last 3 picks, Jackson, Stevens, Johnson, all 3 of those guys can develop. I think you're not going to necessarily see them be like big time players as rookies, but 2-3 years from now, bringing those guys in together, love all 3 of them as projects. So for that reason, only because I'm against giving A pluses, I'm going to give it an A. And I gave 2 A's for the NFC East. What are you going to do about it?
And I'm right there with you, Nick. This is one thing we actually agree on. I'm gonna give the Eagles an A as well. Just like you said, with those last 3 picks and Taron Jackson out of Coastal Carolina, Jacoby Stevens, and Patrick Johnson, I think those are great value picks. And then you have to look at the fact that Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett is about to hit free agency pretty soon. So just like you said, like they might not come in play right away, but they can kind of come in and be that depth piece and then kind of, work their way into being a starter moving forward. But Devontae Smith, I know he probably caught a slide because he weighed in at 166. And I know that was a big factor for a lot of teams out there, but we know the Eagles need playmakers. They had Greg Ward, one of their best receivers, last year was actually a college quarterback. So I tell you what, they finally got a star in Devontae Smith who, can take the top off of defense, who can actually, take the 5-yard route, take the 5-yard catches and take it to the house. He's a complete wide receiver. The only thing you worry about is his size and his build holding up. But one thing I like to, go back to the pundits out there to talk about his size is that, this is a new day and age in the NFL. No one's getting blasted and going across the middle anymore. No one's getting, taking their heads off. So it's a game of space. And I tell you what, Devontae Smith can win when he has space. So I think this is a great pick. The only pick that really surprised me is the Lander Dickerson pick, because we talk about, the health issues, not only with Lander Dickerson, but just with the Philadelphia Eagles, offensive line in general. But this could be a Jason Kelce replacement pick for the years down the road if he can stay healthy. So I like the pick, but, in the second round, it might be a little bit high, especially with the medical stuff you hear out there regarding Landon Dickerson. But overall, I give this draft class an A because they have great value picks that can kind of come in, contribute right away. But if they don't contribute right away, they can actually, put themselves into a starter position moving forward. And, you look at Kenneth Gainwell, just like you said, Nick, if Miles Sanders goes down, he's a compliment back that can come in and play right away. I think he was a high school quarterback. So he kind of knows the layout and the layout of the land on the offense side of the ball. And he's a great receiver out of the backfield as well. So I really love this Eagles draft class. So I'm going to give it an A.
So I'm not quite as high on it as you guys. I think they did a good job overall. Devonta Smith, I know people keep saying he slipped, but I mean, we're talking about him slipping 4 picks.
Number 10.
Yeah, I mean, he was still a top 10 pick at the end of the day. Dickerson is my big time concern. 4 leg injuries in 5 years. There were other centers on the board that didn't have those type of concerns that I feel like are going to be good NFL players. It's a big risk there, just from a medical standpoint. Because if there weren't any medical things, he'd be a first-round pick. So
I was just saying, if he's healthy, though, Jeremy, the value is incredible.
Yeah, and I was just about to say,
and it doesn't have to be this year. You can look at it like maybe this year he's recovering a little bit, and you get him back. Yeah,
they don't have time for him to recover. I mean that often. I mean that's a big reason why I'm not quite as high on this draft class. Is overall they only added 1 offensive lineman in the entire draft in a class that was very deep at offensive line. So kind of what you said. When a team has a deficiency at one spot, draft multiple guys at that position to try to fix the issue. So I have an issue that they didn't even try to go offensive line anywhere else in this draft class. I like Milton Williams as a player. He's going to come in and be that undersized nose tackle, interior pass rusher that Philadelphia just really likes to get. He won't start, but he'll learn behind Javon Hargrave, who they signed last year. Zach McPherson's an interesting story. Used to be a top recruit, to Penn State, ended up transferring to Texas Tech to get more playing time. He's got a ton of talent. I agree with Kenneth Gainwell. He comes in and is like a JD McKissick type of value to that offense, just because he's such a good pass catcher out of the backfield. And it's like you watch him, it's all natural. He's not fighting to catch the ball at all. You can just tell that's something he's naturally good at. And then, like you said, I felt like they rounds in their round 6 and 7 picks, they hit them out of the park as far as value picks, like Marlon Tupatula, or however you say his name, being there in the 6th round that's incredible value. He's never going to be a great pass rusher, but he's a solid, steady run defender with some quickness. So, I mean, guys like him don't grow, they don't just happen. So I really like that pick. Taron Jackson's a nice pick. He's kind of a weird size, but, Philadelphia has been able to get a lot out of different pass rushing types. They've had Vinny Curry, Barnett, a slew of guys who have been productive kind of with how they rush the passer. Jacoby Stevens, I know they say he's a safety. I really think he's going to end up being a linebacker. Just with his speed, he's going to be this really good off the ball will linebacker who can just run around and tackle and hit. Patrick Johnson is another guy, just insanely productive college pass rusher who is going to be able to stick around the league for a little while just because he kind of already has that pass rushing savvy you look for in guys in this type of round. So that's why I'm going to give it a B+, not quite an A. I just really feel like they missed on one of the strengths of this draft class was their offensive line, and only taking one guy that and no tackles. Also than that, where, Peters has been injured. He's got to retire soon. Lane Johnson has been injured. It's just for all the injuries they've had, you would think they would have put in some more insurance for Jalen Hurts going forward. I mean, the one way Jalen Hurts is, reaches his potential is if he has an offensive line. And after this draft class, I'm not sure I can say that he still has a good offensive line in front of him, regardless of injuries or not.
Solid points there, Jeremy. Let's move on to the Washington football team. They took Jamin Davis, a linebacker out of Kentucky, in the first round. I heard Daniel Jeremiah talk about him a lot pre-draft process, and really a guy that rose up the board, super athletic linebacker playing behind that line in Washington up front. He's going to be able to fly around and make some tackles, no problem. Tackle Sam Cosme out of Texas goes in the 2nd round, their 3rd round pick. Benjamin St. Just out of Minnesota. Dyami Brown, another 3rd round pick out of North Carolina, wide receiver. A guy that people, I heard him as high as the 1st in some instances. Definitely has the athletic talent. There was talk about him sneaking in the 1st at some point, so falling to the 3rd, good value there. Bates, the Boise State tight end, in the 4th round, along with Derek Forrest, the safety out of Cincinnati, a long snapper in the 6th round. Saw a couple long snappers drafted. Did you guys happen to see the video of the Carolina long snapper get drafted? You know what? I'll bring that up on the NFC South episode. That was fantastic, though. Cameron Cheeseman out of Michigan, a long snapper in the 6th. Edge rusher William Bradley King in the 7th. Baylor Shaka Toney, good risk in the 7th round there with Toney out of Penn State. And Dax Maline, who is one of Zach Wilson's favorite targets at BYU this year. I like the draft across the board. I'm not wild about taking a long snapper, and then you take a couple risks on some edge guys. Maybe you can get some value out of them. Rivera might be able to develop, but they're nothing more than depth there. Derek Forrest could go either way for me on that one in round 4. And Bates will probably just be a solid player, but I'm looking at a lot of what I give those higher grades on with draft classes, how many dynamic guys that are really going to impact this roster are coming in. And I really, outside of Davis, I'm not seeing the dynamic stuff there. I think you got a lot of solid stuff. Maybe Brown out of North Carolina could have a chance to shine. Cosme could be solid pickup, but Davis is really about it for me. So I'm going to just go with a plain old B for the Washington football team.
I'd have to agree on that front. And I'll tell you what, they were a candidate for me for an A. But drafting a long snapper, are you out of your mind? Like,
he didn't just drop the grade because of the long snapper, right?
Oh, I mean, that is a glaring issue to me. You can sign long snappers off the street. You're giving this guy millions of dollars now to long snap. Don't get me wrong. It's an important position in the NFL. He's on the field for less than 10 plays a game. I mean, if I'm there, you said, they took a chance on some pass rushers late. I'm taking another pass rusher there. Pass rushers are a lot harder to find than long snappers. Offensive linemen are a lot harder to find than long snappers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Kickers.
I would never draft a long snapper. And one of the chief reasons why is the Steelers did that 2 years ago, drafted a long snapper in like the 5th, 6th round. He got beat out by a kid off the street. That is such a waste of draft capital, in my opinion. So, I mean, that's a big deal to me. Just there's one less pick now that I could go on and on. I'm not going to. Jamin Davis, I love Jamin Davis. Great story on this kid. You know what? You know how much he weighed when he got to Kentucky?
No.
He weighed 197 pounds when he got to Kentucky. He put on him nearly 50 pounds. I know the head coach or the head strength and conditioning coach down there because he was the head strength and conditioning coach at Indiana for a while. And I saw him tweet about it the other day where he came to campus at 6'4", 197 and left at 6'4", 245 and became a first-round pick. Just incredible athleticism, wanted to be able to pull that off. Great frame. He makes plays in coverage and against the run. He was a guy that really got overlooked when the draft process started. Like you said, Nick, he really caught fire late. Big reason why he ends up going round one. Really good player. I actually really like Samuel Cosme out of Texas. I know some people are down on him. But I mean, a lot of the things that like are problems with him are very correctable. It's coaching. If he can overextend sometime. If he can learn to just be patient, and he's not great with counter moves. There are times where he is super athletic. I think he can be a very good left tackle in this league. I think to get a left tackle possibility like that in round 2 is fantastic. Benjamin St. Just, good pick there. He's another long, lengthy corner that showed at the Senior Bowl that he can turn and run and cover. Diami Brown, like you said, there were people that thought he could go higher. That's a nice value pick there. He's a little different than what they have there right now. McLaurin's their speed guy. Just signed Curtis Samuel, who's their Swiss Army knife. He's more of a traditional wide receiver, can run all the routes. Not super fast, but he can still get behind players. He can still get behind players. Good hands, makes a lot of good catches. John Bates is actually a guy I kind of forgot about in the draft process that I had a like mid-round grade on him because his size and he wants to block is a big upside here because Washington really wants to run the football. That's one thing they really want to do. He brings effort to the run game, but he's also a very sneaky pass catcher as well. He's not going to blow you away with like his time speed or anything, but he's a very good, solid player. Derek Forrest is another guy where if he would just learn to not bite on the run fake all the time, if his instincts were just a little better, he would have ended up going a lot higher in the draft process because he is an athletic freak. He's like 6 foot, 215 pounds, ran a 4.4. He has a chance to come in and play right away in that secondary just to kind of as a backup just because of that athleticism. Already talked about this dang long snapper, not going to do it anymore. William Bradley King's a guy who showed out kind of well at the Senior Bowl. Kind of long, lengthy guy. We'll see if he pans out. Kind of the same with Shaka Toney. He got a great first step, but I mean, that's about all he has. He's a liability in the run game. Both those guys are really, they're athletic guys. We'll see if, they can get there and develop. Dax Milne.
Good risk in the 7th round though, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. That's where I was saying, you take swings at, players that could be really good. Dax Milne, he's a guy that can get downfield. He was Zach Wilson's #1 receiver, strong hands catcher, can run a lot of routes. Not the fastest, but again, a guy who can get down the field a little bit. So, I'm going to give him a B+. Maybe it was a little harsh on the long snapper criticism, but that's just one more spot where you could have added another offensive lineman, another defensive lineman, another linebacker, somewhere where, maybe a developmental quarterback. Who are they developing at quarterback there right now? Behind Fitzpatrick? No one.
You don't need anybody. You have Fitzmagic.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, I don't
good
need
enough.
anyone. Okay.
That's good enough, man. You
But
got Fitzmagic.
so I mean, good B plus, good B plus. That long snapper pick just doesn't make any sense to me though.
Rob, tell me that you're very pro long snapper picks, and even if you're not, pretend to be for a minute.
Yeah, I can't pretend to be on that one. Like, I have to share the same sentiments as all you guys in regards to taking a long snapper. One thing that we know about this Washington football team is that they need playmakers. Their defense is pretty much right there in the thick of things where they can kind of compete with anyone. In the NFL from the defensive standpoint, especially when you have, Chase Young on one side and Montez Sweat on the other, and you add a athletic linebacker like Jamie Davis that can just, run sideline to sideline like his hair is on fire and just kind of, be that missile seeking player at the linebacker position. It seemed like they hit gold on the running back position, and Antonio Gibson, who's a pass catcher, but he also runs between the tackles. It seems like he can kind of do it all. And Jeremy mentioned that they picked up Curtis Samuels. He had those ties with the Carolina Panthers with, Riverboat Ron being there as the head coach. And I really like the Dianemy Brown pick, outside of Terry McLaurin, at the wide receiver position, they really didn't have anyone. So he's a guy that can kind of take the top off of defense. He makes those contested catches down the field. And, we know Ryan Fitzpatrick loves to throw the deep ball. So I think he can kind of come in and have an impact right away. And just like Jeremy said with Samuel Cosmi, like I really like him as an offensive tackle prospect. It was actually talks that, he could potentially land in the first round last year. So he was a projected first round pick last year ago, but we see this run on offensive tackles. This was a really, really deep class with not only offensive tackles, but just offensive linemen in general. So I love the value pick with Samuel Cosmi. And then you just go down, you have Shaka Toney, which probably is not going to come in and play right away, but he could be a developmental piece behind, Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So I really like this class, but just like you guys said, picking a long snapper, you can kind of get those guys at an undrafted free agent. You can get those guys off the street. I would invest it in developmental quarterback or just added another, offensive piece, maybe another wide receiver, because it was still some, capable wide receivers out there that could, pair up with Dianemy Brown, Terry McLaurin, and kind of take the pressure off Antonio Gibson from, catching passes out the backfield. So I'm going to give this a B minus, but overall, I think they did kind of hit on, the first couple picks. So I'm going to give it a B minus, but taking a long snapper with that pick and knowing that they needed another weapon, I just don't agree with that.
The only team in the NFC East that one of us didn't give an A to, Washington football team. But guys, that's the NFC East recap. We're going to send it out with the message from our sponsor, CoachMate.
American Football Stories is brought to you by CoachPaint. CoachPaint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. CoachPaint offers the ability to clearly telestrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with CoachPaint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.